So my name is Belinda Smith. I'm on the faculty here, and I have the honour of welcoming you all to the Matt Laffan Memorial Address on Social Justice tonight. I would like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and paying my respects to the Gadigal people upon whose land this campus of the university is built. So as I said, I'd like to welcome you here for tonight's memorial address. Tonight's address is jointly hosted by Sydney Law School and by the Australian Human Rights Commission. I would like to really thank Sydney Law School and the Human Rights Commission for their support for this address. We've had a number of these occasions, and I'd also like to acknowledge we have a few former speakers of the address. So we have Professor Ron McCallum, the audience, and we also have Nicholas Cowdery, who has disappeared from my sight, but there he is, so acknowledge you. Past speakers have been also Rosemary Caius, Graham Innes, Peter Fitzsimons, and the late and great Stella Young. Have I missed any? I think that's it. So acknowledge those past speakers. Tonight's address is obviously in honour of Matt Laffan, and this year marks a 10-year anniversary of his passing. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Dick and Jenny Laffan, who, and thank you for allowing us to honour Matt here tonight. It is also in honour of the 25-year anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act. My role here is short, hopefully sweet, and I am now able to pass over to Alistair McEwen, the Disability Discrimination Commissioner, who has the honour of introducing our fine speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda, and good evening, everyone. I too acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respect to the elders past and present, and I also pay my respect to Aboriginal people who are here. Tonight, it's a great honour to be co-hosting the Matt Laffan Memorial Oration with Sydney Law School. As Belinda has highlighted, tomorrow will bring to the end the 25th year or 25th anniversary of the Disability Discrimination Act. 25 years ago, for the first time ever in Australian history, there was a national law that was designed to protect the rights of people with disability from discrimination and to ensure that they could live lives equal to others in society. I could spend all night talking about how far I think we've come, and it's fair to say we have come a long way, but we've got a lot more to go. I also, in talking with Belinda about why it was so important to co-host tonight's event, was sadly on Friday will be the 10th anniversary of Matt Laffan passing. Matt and I were both people with disabilities, disabled people, and our paths crossed a number of times. And every time I was always inspired by Matt's passion to want to live what I often say is an ordinary life. Despite all the barriers that he had and that many people with disabilities had, he just wanted to get on with life. And tonight is an opportunity to pay tribute to Matt's wonderful legacy. And in particular, it's wonderful to have Matt's family here, his parents, Dick and Jenny, and his other family, and many of his friends are also here tonight. Without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, who will provide us with some reflection of Matt Laffan. Peggy Dwyer.
Thank you so much for giving me the honour tonight of sharing with you some reflections about my much-loved friend, Matt. I've done so on 2 other occasions in different forums, and each time I do, to prepare, I spend some time reading through Matt's articles and his submissions to Parliament, his travel blog, and also the novels and poetry books that we exchanged and the letters that we shared. And each time I do, I sit back in awe about Matt's life, about who he was and what he achieved. And I also feel a bit braver each time about sharing with others what he meant to me. Although this is a very welcoming audience, it's a daunting one because some of you will be friends of Matt and will have your own precious Matt stories. Forgive me if you've heard this before, but it captures so much about the ongoing friendship that Matt and I had. We both remembered, Matt and I, that the first client we had on that first day we met was a young Aboriginal man with a serious heroin addiction who had been committing break and enter offences to feed his habit for a long time. He didn't have much hope of bail, except that he had a vague promise of a bed in a residential rehabilitation facility. So I thought that my best line of attack for this young bloke would be to suck up to the prosecutor, who was busy taking his files out of the wheelchair. And I got up to Matt Laffan and I said something like, "Oh, listen, Matt, I've heard you're a lovely bloke. I just want to talk to you about my first client." And he said, "Just save your charm offensive for somebody else. Your bloke's a nightmare. He's got 3 charges of failing to appear. He's been an addict since he was 15. He's been flogging old ladies' handbags and breaking into houses. And he's got Buckleys of getting bail. Unless you could get him into some sort of residential rehab facility and deliver him there." It turns out we could get that young man into a residential drug facility, and by the end of the day, with a few extra conditions, like someone picking up our bloke from jail and depositing him to the door, Matt had agreed not to oppose bail and our fellow was out. I distinctly remember Matt cross-examining that young man's grandmother. He asked her some Dorothy Dixes that I could never have come up with, like, "Why don't you tell the judge why this time will be different for your grandson?" At the end of the day, some of the clients got bail and some more hadn't, but that young fellow who got into that residential rehab felt like a triumph for both of us. And it was the start of a decade-long friendship and a decade-long dispute about how we kicked that friendship off. Because my side is that Matt caved early on the bail and was an absolute softie with the grandma, and at the end of the day passed a note down the bar table saying something like, "You owe me a drink." But Matt's side is that he held out on the bail until some very tight conditions were put in place, gave grandma a grilling, and at the end of the day got a note from a very forward female defence lawyer, something like, "I owe you a drink." And I know that fight would still be going on if he were here with us today. As our friendship developed outside of court, I discovered a man who loved to talk about social justice and to argue the rights and wrongs of recent decisions. He was a man of faith, but not blind faith, and he had an inquiring and questioning mind. Matt was prepared to assumptions and to call out mine if I got a little over the top. I learnt so much from him in those discussions. And as I grow older and my cases get harder, I just wish he was here now to talk them over. I like to think he would have joined me at the bar and become a defence lawyer, but I rather suspect that he would have continued to be a great leader and lawyer at the DPP because he loved it so much. Matt was an excellent prosecutor, highly respected by the bench and the bar. He prepared each case carefully, he argued clearly, and he brought to the bar table the best qualities of the Crown advocating on behalf of the community, which are not always to keep people in custody. Matt was tough, but he was never tricky. He took the law and the rights of victims very seriously, but he never took himself too seriously. He was sometimes sceptical about my clients, but he was never cynical. Like his wonderful had an extraordinary sense of compassion for those less fortunate, and he knew that people who commit crimes often do so because they have suffered extreme trauma themselves. Matt wanted to give people a fair go at turning their lives around. In addition to his work as a prosecutor, Matt was a powerful advocate for the rights of people with a disability. As many of you here must know, after he became more senior at the DPP, it became apparent that a lack of wheelchair access into the Banco Court at the Supreme Court of New South Wales would prevent him from carrying out all his duties. He took up the issue with the Chief Judge of the Supreme Court of the day, the Honourable Chief Judge Murray Gleeson, later the Chief Judge of the High Court of Australia. Well, within 6 months of his direct dealing with Justice Gleeson, wheelchair access was provided to that court, and over all access issues connected with the Supreme Court were reviewed and corrected as required. Matt was a trailblazer, and his greatest satisfaction came from opening the doors for other people. There are countless articles that Matt wrote and submissions he wrote to various venues to make them more accessible. I recently reread an article he wrote in the Herald about access, and since he was far more eloquent than me, I'll just read you a snapshot of it. He writes this: "It's a glorious Sunday Sydney evening and myself and a lady friend step out for some wine, dinner, conversation and a band we want to hear. The venue, we find, has it all, plus 2 flights of stairs. Why can I not get in unassisted? Why should 4 bouncers struggle under the weight of this chair? I live in the dead centre of this fabulous harbour city. Why is there a step into the pharmacy on Bathurst Street stopping me from getting in? Why has the medical centre in Park Street got a step leading into it? I'm a lawyer who works for the New South Wales Director of Public Prosecutions. Why do I have to rely on police to carry me up the stairs of the Newtown local court? Why have most inner city convenience stores got steps at their entry point? For spinal cord injuries, it's what I called getting beyond the front gate. It's about stepping outside our homes and our comfort zone and being exposed to those things which we discover anew. It's about sharing ourselves with others. It's about getting into the workplace, enjoying the concert, dining out and having a presence. It's about access to life, access to the basics, the bread and circuses, as well as the politics and education. And I think that's what Al means when he says it's about having an ordinary life. Matt goes on to say, I am well beyond the front gate. I have bolted. I cop it sweet and work on the positives to bring about change. But once in a while, I'll allow myself the luxury to admit that life can be bloody hard. The trick is what to do about it. Matt goes on to give some practical tips in that article about how we can all advocate for change. But he knew what to do about it. He knew he had to fight. Matt started a fantastic travel blog called accessibility.com.au, Travelling Beyond the Front Gate. He did that to share his own adventures about travelling overseas and in Australia. And they make for great reading that you can still catch up on now. So I've just refreshed my memory about his posts on jazz clubs in New York, wine bars in Noosa, and helicopter rides in the Northern Territory, which he undertook with his girlfriend when they came to visit me when I was working for NAJA up there. Matt made it look much easier than it was. We can't all be blessed with his smarts or his personality or his parents, but we can all learn from the way he gripped life with both hands and got around the bloody obstacles, as he'd say. Matt was a powerful orator. Nick Farr-Jones, in an article I read, recounted a story that he had heard Matt tell in the presence of Quentin Bryce, who of course went on to be our governor. Matt told that story to 500 spellbound Queenslanders. He recounted an occasion where he considered himself to have had a great legal triumph in the Supreme Court. He was feeling $1 million heading back to the office. And then, Matt continued, I was rolling along Elizabeth Street when I caught sight of my reflection in the window in David Jones and stopped and stared. A funny-looking bloke in a wheelchair, 3 foot high with a massive chest, and I thought, who are you kidding? Look at you. Look at you. But then what could I do? I kept rolling along and crossed a street, and I crossed another street, and kept rolling along and going along the road until I got to you here tonight. And I read that and it reminded me of many times when I went to hear Matt at a public speaking engagement with his offer of a free ticket and the promise of a drink at the end of a speech. Well, it was often 11 p.m. before I got to have a drink with Matt, because after every speech there was a line of fans wanting to line up and talk to him about what he'd said, how inspiring it was, and what it meant to them. In 2004, Matt stood for Lord Mayor against Clover Moore and other more high-profile candidates. He He got a prime spot on Andrew Denton, and he revealed his official campaign slogan, "Vote for me, I'm 4'3". But the real reason he ran, of course, was to draw attention to access issues, and it was tremendously successful. The former Lord Mayor, the charming Frank Sartor, referred to Matt and other aspirants as local government pissants. Matt thought that was hilarious, but I have read Matt's recent campaign. Matt Laffan Independent, his slogan said, has a planning strategy for the city for the next decade. It goes on to include Matt's incentives to achieve environmental sustainability, his push for recycled water for every home, and his actions on the Sydney foreshore land to be protected. He was truly ahead of his time in regard to environmental issues for this. Matt's love of rugby was well known, but not to me. As our friendship developed, I discovered a man who loved music, dance, art, opera, ballet, and wine. Matt had a love of fun and a wicked sense of humour. When you were out with Matt, magic happened. It only took one glass of champagne before he'd dance in the courtyard on the Opera House on the way home, tell bawdy jokes and make friends with the crew backstage. Matt's friends liked to claim him as one of the blokey blokes, but to the ladies, he was a deep-thinking romantic and a Renaissance man. On the second time I met Dick Laffan, he was dropping Matt off at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, where we were going to watch the Chookie dancers from Arnhem Land. Matt reintroduced me to Dick and explained that I had met him before. Dick looked a little bit blank at that time and said something like, "I'm sorry, Peggy, it's just that Matt does have a lot of lady friends." As good friends do, Matt and I spent a fair bit of time discussing people we were dating and the differences between men and women. Soon after Matt visited me in Arnhem Land, he broke up with the then girlfriend he was seeing, and I sent him a book which is called How to Deal with Heartbreak. A few months later, I had my own breakup, and Matt sent the book straight back. It had notations on it, which of course I've kept to this day in case they come in handy. He had a note on what he thought was bollocks in the book and what were some decent ideas. A few months went by and it seemed to be taking me much longer than it had taken Matt to cheer up about my heartbreak. So in the December before Matt died, he wrote me a letter. I've still got it and I've shared some of it with you. The birthday of the guy I had broken up with was coming up. Matt was worried that I couldn't let go. He thought I might send that bloke a birthday card. So Matt writes this, 19th of November 2008. Peggy, okay, here's the deal. Knowing you too well, I fear the temptation to send, let's call him Mr. X, a birthday card might prove too strong. So I've taken the liberty of buying one for you and addressing the envelope. However, you will see it will arrive at my place, not his. So you will have the pleasure, question mark, of sending the card, but not the indignity of suffering while you wait for a response that might never arrive. What do you reckon? Pure genius? Of course it is. So no need to buy a card, here it is. And no need to fret as to whether to post it or not. It's addressed and ready to go. All you have to do is choose your words, ... carefully. Love, Matt. So you can imagine I sent the card with as much purple prose as I could muster, which was a lot after a decade as a criminal defence lawyer. It was this bomb and that bomb and a fair bit of nonsense which was purely for Matt's entertainment. And I remember Matt picking up the phone after he had received it and trying to catch his breath, laughing, telling me that I had exceeded even his expectations of my creativity. To our enormous shock and dismay, it was only in March the following year that Matt got sick and passed away. So in the weeks after he died, Dick called and said, "Now, love, I've found a few letters and cards here that you might like to pick up that you and Matt have exchanged over the years." Well, you can imagine the colour draining from my face at the thought of Dick having to read that card. But it dawned on me that it was addressed to somebody entirely different to Matt, so I hope that it just got put in the bin and my colourful prose was never revealed. Matt did a lot of mopping up of tears and listening and drinking on the balcony and dishing out good solid life advice. He would never hear of his friends having put a foot wrong. In court, Matt would stick to his ground and argue the opposite case. But in life, if you were Matt's mate, he was always on your side. I'm going to finish up now, but I want to finish up by reading to you something else that Matt wrote. Matt had a real love of poetry and prose. Apparently, I find out, Googling, that just before the Wallabies played the All Blacks in the crucial semi-final of the 1991 World Cup, the Australian captain Nick Farr-Jones read an inspirational letter to the team penned by Matt. Even I know enough about Australian rugby to know how much they need him now. But Matt also wrote his own poetry, and I want to leave you tonight with one of his poems that I picked out from a book of his poetry published after we lost Matt. The works in this book are so beautiful. They've been written at various times of Matt's life, from when he was a teenager right through to when he was an adult, and they are a reflection of his breadth and his depth. So I could have chosen from titles like Rugby, a Mysterious Lass, which did not move me, or Love is an Ocean, which really did move me, or Blue Gum Bark, which is a love letter to the Australian bush. I'll read you just a stanza from a poem that Matt wrote in 1988 when he had recently turned 18, and it's called I Am 18 Years Old. The sun, she whispers, that I am 18 years old, and that with the end of the year, a new life will unfold. But will it be tragic, sun, or will it be grand, this life that awaits me? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. Matt's life was grand, and those of us who shared it with him were really privileged to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for that lovely, heartfelt, warm, wonderful reflection on Matt. So thank you, and we have a small gift of appreciation. It is now my wonderful, great pleasure to introduce you to our speaker for this year's Matt Laffan Memorial Oration, Carly Findlay. Carly is an award-winning writer, speaker and appearance activist. She writes on disability issues for publications including the ABC, Daily Life and SBS. She was named as one of Australia's most influential women in the 2014 Australian Financial Review and Westpac 100 Women of Influence Award. She has appeared on ABC You Can't Act That, one of my favourite TV series, and Cyber Hate with Tara Moss. She also is a regular on various ABC radio programmes. Carly has also just this year released her book, Say Hello. So it's been a big year so far for Carly, and we are thrilled that she is here tonight with us and on the live stream to deliver the 2019 Matt Laffan Memorial Address. Please welcome Carly.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Peggy, for that great insight into Matt. He sounded like a lovely man, and I'm sure that we would have discussed stories about writing. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, to traditional owners of the land. I pay my respects to Aboriginal elders, past, present and emerging, and I extend my friendship to Aboriginal people in the room tonight. I'm thankful to Aboriginal people for looking after our land so well. Your care allows us to work and to play on it. Thank you for sharing your traditions, your stories, your art, your culture and your wisdom with us. Sovereignty was never ceded and treaties have never been signed. We're on stolen land tonight. Furthermore, I recognise past and present leaders in the disability rights movement. Thank you for paving our way for freedom and equity. Matt Laffan's parents, Dick and Jenny, are here tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge them too. It was wonderful to talk to you both earlier. And thank you to Alistair McEwen, the Human Rights Commission, and Sydney University for having me talk. So just a note on language before I begin. I use the term disabled as part of my identity, like I'm a woman, like I'm a writer, like I'm an arts worker, like I am a cheese lover. It's part of my identity. If you feel more comfortable using the term people with disability for yourself or for others, that's okay too. I'd also like to recognise my privilege because many disabled people aren't afforded the same opportunities as me, and they should be. So when I started to prepare for this speech, I researched Matt. I wanted to find some quotes from him, but even though we're 11 years apart in age, he actually existed in the age before social media. So that was something quite new to me. And I did find two key interviews and his blog that I read, and I'll be touching on two tonight, one from Australian Story and the other one from Andrew Denton. They made me think about tokenism and the desire to live a full life, which Matt did. Matt lived a full life. But tokenism doesn't enable us, or doesn't always enable us to live a full life. I'm going to quote from the Andrew Denton interview. Matt said, "I'd like to think of Australians as sophisticated. You can tell the sophistication of a society by the way it looks after those who can't look after themselves. I think we've drifted a little as a nation, but in regards to people with disability, it seems pretty good. There's a lot more that can be done, and I think attitudes towards people with disability have improved a great deal. It is a cliche, but I think people are focusing on the ability, and I think the Paralympics has a great deal to do with that. But we've got to get beyond, as a nation, of patting the backs of athletes. These pat on the backs that Matt, that's very hard to say, these pats on the back that Matt mentions are tokenism. Paralympians are still low paid compared to other athletes, and they still have to fundraise to do what they love." Matt then went on to acknowledge that as a lawyer at the Director of Public Prosecutions, the pay, this is a quote from him, "the pay isn't enough because there's a lifestyle that comes with a disability that's hard to maintain." He cited the cost of wheelchairs and support workers. I'm able to do that because I work. The equipment I need is not always subsidised. That's the thing that holds me back. And I wondered in 2019, would Matt have been eligible for the NDIS? I should hope so. Matt's words about being one of the working disabled, it resonated with me. I too am a working person, and there's this strange space that many working disabled people occupy. We're not disabled enough to receive assistance, but too disabled to further our careers. So I haven't received Centrelink support since early 2003 when I was 21, before I commenced working full-time. And my first full-time wage at the government, it was really small. It was around $500 a week, and rent was $200 a week. And it's expected that when we work, we can still afford to manage our disability or manage the costs of our disability. I just wanted a healthcare card. I didn't even want any sort of allowance. I wanted a healthcare card so I could get some of my medication subsidised. And I wasn't entitled to it, despite meetings with ministers. So while I struggled to maintain all of my financial commitments back then, I went without some of the recommended medications at times. And some disabled people resort to charity and crowdfunding to get their essential supports because the government just doesn't meet everybody's needs. So for those of us in the middle, unable to qualify for disability support pensions, healthcare cards, mobility allowance and the NDIS, which isn't a solution for all disabled people. I was reading on we should get better support. We should get a hand up, not a handout. I was reading on The Conversation, the website The Conversation, from a 2016 article. They wrote, when the scheme is fully implemented in 2019, up to 10% of people with disability, about I'm really bad with numbers, sorry, about 460,000 people are expected to receive a disability support package. However, many people eligible for the NDIS are likely to miss out on its benefits. So again, it's not a catch-all. Last week, a stranger emailed me to tell me how much he hates me, that I don't do anything good for disabled people. He told me that I use my disability and I make money from it. At least he knew how to use an apostrophe in "you're right," I thought. So I thought about his comment for a bit, and it confirmed what is often drilled into us. It's the cause of internalised ableism, that disabled people aren't allowed to make money, that disabled people aren't allowed to tell our own stories, that disabled people are expected to cop this kind of abuse. So apart from his use of the C word to me, and the bit about hating me, and that I don't actually do anything about disability rights, my troll did have a fair point. He was right. I do use disability to my advantage, and I've had to because of the barriers that I've faced in employment. Not so much in getting a job, but progressing in my employment. For the most part, I worked with wonderful people. I used to work for the public service for about 15 years. I know I don't look past 17, but I did work for the public service for about 15 years. For the most part, I worked with amazing people, but I spent years trying to keep my head above water. I endured the low expectations and discrimination in my full-time job there. I chose government because it was safe, it paid well, it had good benefits that I needed in terms of sick leave and superannuation. I was celebrated for my diversity and my outside work. I won awards for it at work. But this never got me a promotion. I was too much. I was too loud in my activism to get work in the workplace diversity department, and not qualified enough to get a job in communication, despite having a Master of Communication and writing regularly for national news outlets. Only a small amount of the discrimination was overt. The rest, as Graham Innes says, was the soft bigotry of low expectations. So the Australian when asked what the biggest barrier to a career development within their agency was, employees with disability most frequently cited lack of promotion opportunities, and employees with disability were more likely than employees without disability to report that unfair recruitment practices as a barrier to their career development. I didn't want to believe it when my dad said that these people saw me as a liability. But after almost 15 years of not progressing past the substantive APS 4, despite being good at my job and as events planner and writer, told not to be so passionate and angry about disability rights, dissuaded from making a complaint in case it affected the bullies' careers, and being asked to use the accessible toilet because other people were offended by my skin, I had to leave. I was sick of being a token. I was sick of the supposed diverse workplace not supporting diverse people. So I worked my way to get out. I had no choice. I did use my disability to my advantage. I did a side hustle for years, writing on the side while I worked part-time. And this prepared me for life outside, a new career. I could finally take that jump out of that supposedly safe workplace. So now I work as Access and Inclusion Coordinator at Melbourne Fringe. I help artists make their shows more accessible, and I provide support and outreach to disabled artists and audiences. I love it. I also provide disability competency training to workplaces. I write for the media, I speak, I perform, and I've just written a book about life with Ichthyosis. And I'm up to my second book now, an anthology that's open to anyone who grew up in Australia that identifies as disabled and chronically ill. I still make a full-time wage equivalent to what I made at the government, but I'm owning my story. I'm owning my work, no apologies. I do use my disability to make a living, and my troll was right. And doing this kind of work, it's been the best thing for my health and my confidence. 10 to 12 sick days a year, which is actually below the average for the public service. And that's unexpected for disabled and sick people, so that's a win for me. I've had fewer sick days as an arts worker and freelancer. I can work with people that I've not had the chance to work with at the APS because I was too lowly an employee. People like Alistair McEwen. I can say that I'm overwhelmed with work on my social media, and I will only do reviews of pyjamas, and pyjama companies will send me pyjamas. They do. And I can be myself in everything that I do. I don't leave my disability behind when I go to work now. But this has been what I'm forced into. And so many disabled people that I know experience the same thing when looking for work or looking for promotions. A friend of mine, Christy Mountsie, tagged me on Facebook last night. She said, "I'm reading Carly Findlay's new book, Say Hello, and crying in the chapter about employment. I feel this area of my life is one where I've not had the opportunities to fulfil my potential." Sorry, I hope this will change. I'm going to see if disability employment services have changed and try a new one this time with an Ability Links coordinator for support. I want to do a job where I get paid the award and do something meaningful for 2 days a week, and I can continue my volunteer roles. She went to tell me more by private message, which she said I could share. Last time I was at a DES provider, I was told by an employment consultant who had never been to TAFE or university that the best thing I could ever hope for was a part-time job in retail, despite having an undergraduate degree, a certificate 4 in small business and a certificate 4 in mental health, and no experience working in retail. My friend Christy is a smart, educated, vibrant 38-year-old woman that's never had the employment opportunities that I've had, and she deserves better. It made me think of how many disabled people start their own business because they're tired of fighting the system. Since I've become a freelancer, I've seen it. Freelancing and micro-enterprise works for us. I came up, and one of them is Beck Lambert, who is a content marketer. She runs the Freelance Jungle Facebook group, making freelance work a little more connected and a little less lonely to those who often work from home in isolation. Beck tells me that freelancing and working from home is beneficial for management of her disability. It's also been a significant asset with managing physical ailments such as chronic endometriosis and associated pain, diverticulitis, mild cerebral palsy and mental health issues, she said. There's no way that traditional employment environments would have been able to need either my day-to-day management or treatment of these conditions effectively. From home that I stopped feeling ineffective and started having more sick days than most, but still being one of the most productive people. Beck makes a really great point about productivity. I work from bed a lot, something I couldn't do in my previous workplace. It means I can wear comfy clothes even when I'm sore. Beck went on to tell me that productivity isn't a linear thing. It's not turn up at 7 a.m. and go home at 7 p.m. It needs to be smarter than that. I also think that a lot of places pride themselves on being flexible and proactive, that use programs that don't work in reality. Who cares about a smoothie machine if you have to walk 3 flights of stairs to arrive in agony? Who cares about morning yoga if you are shamed for going home sick when you need to? And attitudes need to change. Mentally healthy workplaces are not mainstream, and they should be. It boosts productivity after all. Also, they can learn to better manage all kinds of people if they don't allow themselves to create policies that exclude. I'm tired of hearing people being treated differently for being open about health or mental health. I love Beck, and you should all go and follow her work at Unashamedly Creative. She's great. So I want to touch on awards and employment now. So awards can be amazing. It's really important that disabled people get recognition for their work, for our work, but they need to have a true benefit. So my friend Alicia Wright was recently named Moreton Bay Citizen of the Year for her work around disability rights, access and inclusion. She is Miss Fridayology on Twitter. Follow her as well. I was really, really proud of her. But this award has come after years and years of unpaid work. Alicia has the lived experience, skills and expertise to develop disability action plans and advise council on access and inclusion. Yet she, like most disabled people, are expected to work for free, to give back. Now she has this award. There's been no offers of paid employment. The Mayor said her work was invaluable, but they gave her a morning tea and a glass trophy. She told me if it was so valuable, then paid employment in this area wouldn't have gone to a non-disabled person. I support awards and I want to see disabled people acknowledged for their hard work, but I also want to see payment for true progress, pay for progress, pay disabled people. Someone give Alicia and others a hand up so she can feel valued, respected and included and can live well above the poverty line. Until then, It's just lip service. As I said before, tokenism doesn't enable us to live our fullest lives. Who does it benefit when we're asked to work for free and be the face of a cause and win awards but never given a job? For everything. So I often get asked to work for free. I only do a few things that are important to me a year, like this event, but I still think you should be paying speakers. Sorry. Not sorry. A perfect example happened this week. I laughed and I grimaced at the irony. So a recruitment agency asked me to consult on their diversity and inclusion plan. They wanted me to provide comment on the importance of the diversity and inclusion plan in improving employees' lives. I think the plan was going to be sold on to workplaces. They were calling on women from diverse backgrounds to do the work. A number of women had provided expert opinion and advice to this plan. I said no. The recruitment agency didn't have a budget. I thought about this. Do I say no because they might ask someone else to work for free, or do I say no because this goes against the very essence of the diversity and inclusion plan? So I wrote to them. I haven't heard back. Hi, please do not ask marginalised people to consult for no pay. As a staff member at this recruitment agency, I'm sure you're getting paid. I'm sure your company pays its cleaners, its caterers, its IT specialists, its speakers. My job is a freelance writer and speaker. I've got a Masters of Communication and I'm experienced in writing opinion pieces for the media. I've written a book, I've delivered training, and I have lived disability experience. Like you, I need to have an income to pay my rent and bills, to buy food and medication, and to live a full and active life. I want to be able to contribute socially and economically. Therefore, I charge a fee. It's all too common that disabled people are asked to work for free because of the exposure, the opportunities, and the expectation that we can just give up our time and a lack of budget to offer our expertise. Did you know that 45% of disabled people live on or below the poverty line? In 2015, the ABS reported that 53.4% of all people with disability aged 15 to 64 years were unemployed, compared with 83.2% of the people without a disability. Sorry, I think that's meant to read 53.4% of people are in employment compared to the 83.2% of people without disability in employment. I am really bad at numbers. There are Australian disability enterprises, ADEs, across Australia providing supported employment assistance to approximately 20,000 people with moderate to severe disability. ADEs are funded by the Australian government, and people who are working in these are only earning a few dollars an hour. How is this empowering? Disabled people need to be paid. I then linked to a piece I wrote for the ABC a few years ago. I told them that this article still stands. It's about not working for free. I wanted to say your diversity and inclusion plan is not effective if you are not paying the experts with lived experience to consult on this topic. Please consider your business model before you ask any more marginalised people to work for free. You are contributing to the systemic discrimination and employment barriers that we face. Regards, Carly. Haven't heard back. I actually also emailed a person who consulted on that and haven't heard back from them either. It's a real privilege, but it hasn't been easy. There's an expectation for disabled people to be polite and compliant. It's expected that we'll be grateful for the experience and not speak up when we're not treated well. Last year I experienced a very difficult radio interview with a seasoned host on ABC Melbourne. The topic that I was asked to speak on was microaggressions. So microaggressions are the kind of casualised ableism that we face. The topic was microaggressions, and he described my appearance back to me. It was factual but still confronting. He suggested my face would be good at Halloween, and he asked me, after I said what the most difficult question was, so can you have sex? Because that was the most difficult question I've ever been asked. And he said, so can you have sex? They were microaggressions delivered in real time on a public radio station. The public was shocked. The story made national news. I was dissuaded from making a complaint. You notice a theme here? Before that interview, I was a regular guest. I wasn't just invited in to talk disability, but then I wasn't. I wasn't invited back for 10 months. It's not certain that my interview and the lack of invite are related, but I feel that interview cost me. Michelle Guthrie mentioned in Parliament late last year that she didn't defend me because she had a problem with this host, and that's women supporting other women, hey? He's in a position of power, but I have to keep proving that I'm not difficult and that I deserve a place in the media and that myself and other people deserve a place in the media. We don't have the luxury of turning down opportunities because we are rarely invited. We don't have the luxury of being too assertive because we'll be labelled as aggressive and difficult. They'll say, well, we've had one disabled person and that didn't work, so we can't possibly have another one here. And that's tokenism. So I dream of the day that I don't have to explain my appearance or talk about my diagnosis to justify my presence in a radio or podcast interview, because my co-host never has to, because the next guest never has to. It's not a visual medium. I shouldn't have to describe the way I look when I'm there to talk about something. And I'm actually trying to get the courage to describe the host appearance back to them one day. So tokenism just doesn't allow us to live our fullest lives, and it doesn't make us visible either. We need regular spots in the media, not just when we're called to make a statement about disability issues, but we should be invited to talk about a range of topics that we're interested in or that we're experts in. And we should be asked to play characters where disability is incidental. The 2017 Screen Australia Seeing Ourselves report showed that disability is very much underrepresented in TV drama compared to the Australian population. So 18% of Australians are estimated to live with disability, but only 4% of main characters in Australia TV dramas were identifiably characters with a disability. Like, we're not visible on the screen. So I've just written a book, and it's been out for about 5 weeks now, and the response has been amazing. But I think because of tokenism, there's this weird response, because someone might only see me on TV talking about my book, or they might not ever see a disabled person in life. My book's called Say Hello, and people just come up to me and say hello, which is odd, because they'll just say hello and then nothing more. But sometimes I've had people rush up to me really, really over the top. Oh my gosh, Carly, you're so amazing. You're so brave. I just wanted to tell you what an inspiration you are. And I'll say, oh, thanks on none of those things. That's covered in chapter 2. And they'll just argue that I am, and they're not interested in the book. But the worst thing is, the worst bit, when people come up and they say that I put their life and their health into perspective. I'm here to do that. And I think because disabled people are not encouraged to be open about our disability, we're not encouraged to be open about our disability in the world, in the workplace, and not in the media regularly. And when we are, people think we're overcoming our bodies, not overcoming the barriers that they place. So people are often inspired and surprised that we can achieve anything because of their own low expectations. So I really don't exist to put someone else's life into perspective. With a quote, another quote from Matt Laffan. This is from Australian Story. So for people in my situation, well, there are two choices. There's a choice that you embrace life and you participate, or you don't. The alternative, you don't and can't comprehend. Sorry, the alternative, don't. I just can't comprehend what that will mean. I cannot imagine not using my brain. I could not imagine being surrounded by intelligent, interesting people, and I cannot imagine not having a good life. It just comes from, I guess, it might be the sense of destiny. When I was born, I was given a time to live, a very short time, and I was given 1 week. And so I guess when I took in those first sharp breaths, something went deep inside of me other than the oxygen. There was this will to live, this knowledge that life is really about a short race and making what you can of every opportunity that comes your way. I guess when people ask me how has it been growing up with a disability, or in fact living with a disability, it's a bit like, for me, that great Australian film Babe and the pig who didn't realise he was a pig. For me, it's very much the same. I'm someone living with a disability and have always done so, but I didn't really realise that I had a disability until a situation or people pointed out to me. So Matt lived an incredible life. He lived an ordinary life too. He participated, he embraced, and he loved life, and all disabled people want to do that. And that's why tokenism has to stop. We aren't here to be awarded and entertaining to make others feel better about themselves and to tick off corporate social responsibility boxes. We're here to lead full, incredible, and ordinary lives, and tokenism won't allow us to do that. It's not enough for disabled people to be the only one in the room, the only person in the workplace, the conference, the only woman at the leadership event, the only senator in Parliament, and it's even worse if we're not in the room. Thank you.
Oh, well, it's all a bit awkward, isn't it?
You stand there.
So we would like to thank all of you for coming. We'd like to thank our speakers. We've already thanked Peggy to some extent, but I actually studied with Matt Laffan, so I started here in 1989 doing law, and I didn't get to know him well enough, and so it was just lovely to hear some of those reflections and to get a greater sense of him, and also pay tribute to his parents. So thank you.
And from me, a big thank you to Carly for her wonderful speech. I think we'll all go home and think about tokenism, about inspiration and how Stella Young hated that word, and also about the barriers that society put up. So thank you so much, Carly, for your lovely speech and a small token from us. So please. In bringing this to a close, on behalf of Belinda and myself, a huge thank you to the Sydney Law School staff, Carla and others, and to the wonderful team at the Australian Human Rights Commission. Thank you to all who contributed to the running of this event. But last but not least, thank you to here in the room and on the live stream. Thank you for coming, and best wishes for the rest of the year. Thank you.